So the likelihood of hardcore servers is very likely. I mean, the Blizzard CEO has hinted at it in a Twitter post, and we have data mined some interesting information. But the vast majority of players are probably never going to play on a hardcore server because of its most punishing feature. When you die, that's it. You have to delete your character. I mean, it is a pretty brutal punishment. I mean, it's nearly as punishing as living in the UK in 2023, and that's saying something. It is going to put a lot of people off, but to be honest, that's not really that much of a problem. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a small, close-knit community. And this is in no way me saying that the hardcore challenge is bad or anything. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy playing the hardcore challenge myself, but it has got me thinking of a server concept that would attract even more players than hardcore servers. And that is veteran servers. Now, I got the idea from Diablo. Basically in Diablo, what you can do is you can go to somewhere in the game and change the world tier that you're on. This means you can put the world in a higher difficulty mode, which makes the entire world have more difficult enemies and better loot. And I think it would be interesting if this concept could be implemented into Classic WoW or even Dragonflight, because imagine if the open world was simply just a more difficult environment. Imagine if mobs were tough to kill, they had more HP and they dealt more damage to the player. For instance, a Defier's Trapper in Westfall now has double the HP and he deals double the damage to the player. Imagine if the open world was so difficult that you can't progress without doing dungeons for gear. For example, let's say you want a level in Duskwood at level 22. Well, guess what? It's not happening if you've only done quests getting some basic greens, because the mobs are too powerful and you can barely stay alive day to day just doing quests. You will actually need to go and do dungeons for gear, and obviously the dungeon quests will be very, very useful. Now, if you're bored of Wrath of the Lich King Classic and you can't wait for Season Mastery 2, if they are even going to release it, then you may be interested in trying out a new MMO. What if I told you there's an MMO out there that year on year is continuously growing with more and more players, 27 million worldwide to be precise? You may have heard of Final Fantasy XIV, as many WoW players and content creators have made the switch to this MMO. But you're also probably wondering, why on earth why? Well, let me tell you, Final Fantasy XIV, just like all the other installments in the franchise, is a great storytelling game with compelling and believable characters within a world of detailed and fascinating lore to dive into. Another interesting feature in Final Fantasy XIV is the ability to effectively change the class of your character. Classes are called jobs in the game, and the free trial allows you to play 14 of them, but there is actually a total of 20 different unique feeling specializations to choose from. The free trial also allows you to level up all the way to level 60 without spending a penny, so you can experience a lot of the game's content before you even make your final decision to buy the game. This is probably the most amount of content you're ever going to get out of a free trial. So click the link in the description to get started with one of the greatest Final Fantasy stories ever told. But anyway, let's get on with the video. Also, professions would become more useful in giving your character better gear, plus things like alchemy and engineering would be very useful at increasing your player power. And if you don't have an armor making profession, you will need to interact with other players. Just don't interact too much because you might actually start to grow a soul, and that is something WoW players should probably stay away from. Enchant on your gear would be more impactful. There's also a lot of good low-level PvP gear in Classic from the Battleground vendors, so doing low-level PvP could also be a route to get better gear. By the way guys, I am very soon making a video about how to totally remaster Classic WoW with scripts, macros, add-ons, and some groovy stuff that you can do with an Nvidia graphics card, so be sure to subscribe so you do not miss that video. It's coming very soon. The dungeons themselves could be tuned up in difficulty with more health and damage, and maybe fixes like in Heroic Plus dungeons that we currently have in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. They could decrease the maximum dungeon size to 3, or maybe they could make them so difficult that they actually require a 10-man. This could also be implemented into the open world elite group quests. Imagine if you actually needed a 10-man squad to go and do the Red Ridge elite quests like Gaffirzog and Pharazôn. I mean, at that point, they would pretty much be mini world bosses. I think to balance the increased level of difficulty, there would have to be more loot added to the game, like in dungeons, or added to quests, or they are added to named world bosses and their quests. I mean, Vanilla WoW is even more stingy than every single landlord in existence on its own, so with increased difficulty there would have to be bigger loopholes. But what's the point of all this? What's the point of making the open world more difficult and make the leveling journey more difficult? Well, this would make leveling progression much harder and slower. Now, the best part of playing the Hardcore Challenge and playing the All-Stars Challenge is how you pretty much have to min-max at every single level. You go out and experience more of the open world quests and dungeons, you actually end up playing more of the game's content because you're not rushing to get to max level. With the All-Stars Challenge, you know, there was a level cap of 22 and this creates a theoretical patch. With the open world content being so difficult that you physically can't progress to the next zone without actually doing a few dungeons, this would slow down progression and just give players a chance to actually enjoy the low level content a little bit more. You could get the awesome fun element of playing the Hardcore Challenge without the horrible death equal delete penalty. Now, the real difficulty in the Hardcore Challenge really is patience. Most people die to being impatient, or doing stupid things, or just simply getting unlucky, like mobs respawning on you or something like that. You know, it's a different kind of difficulty, but with veteran servers, the game itself would actually be difficult. They could implement this in a number of different ways. They could have a veteran server on Classic Era right now, a server exclusive for this extra difficulty mode. Or they could do it more like Diablo 4. You can play the game on any server that you want, but when you make your character, you will select veteran mode, and then you will put into your own phase where the mobs have more HP and hit for harder damage, and you only ever see other players also doing veteran mode on your server, and then you can also obviously only invite people doing the challenge too. And then when you hit max level, you know, you can turn veteran mode off and group up with anyone you want for endgame. Maybe they could even introduce a torment mode for players who are already max level, where other mobs in the open world are max level too, and there could be benefits for max players actually going back to do old open world content and dungeons. And I think it could easily be implemented into Wrath Lich King Classic or Retail too. One of the big problems of leveling in Wrath Classic, and especially Cataclysm, like I've highlighted in my very recent video where I played Cataclysm for 100 hours and reviewed it, I'll leave a link to that in the description. Well, the problem is, the leveling difficulty is absolutely brain dead. I mean, it's easier than getting a vegan person to tell you that they are vegan before you even know their name. A harder difficulty mode for the leveling journey would make the open world relevant once again and make leveling an actual part of the game rather than just something you get out of the way so you can do raids at endgame. You know, people will do their weekly raids of their guild and then level on veteran mode just for fun, because veteran mode would almost feel like its own endgame content in itself. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I just think it'd be more interesting and attract more players if it actually made the content itself, the game itself, a leveling journey more difficult rather than just introducing a extremely severe penalty for dying. Because then the game would be more difficult rather than you making the game more difficult for yourself. But anyway guys, that's going to be the end of the video there. Be sure to check out my second channel also for videos not related to WoW. But anyway, until the next time, ciao.